Summit. The next one is Al Kingsley. Let me give you a little introduction to Al. I'm sure he'll be familiar to many of you. He's a best-selling author and international speaker. He's the CEO of Net Support, and he's a multi-academy trust chair. He had just launched Al's Education Directory, which kind of showcases a lot of things going on in education and people who are delivering some amazing sessions in education. And he has got a very popular LinkedIn newsletter. So if you're on LinkedIn, do check it out. Connect with Al and check out his newsletter because it is much loved. He also, earlier this year, was given an NDE by the King of England, King Charles, for his services to education. So let's bring Al in. Al, good to see you, my friend.
Hello. Lovely to be here. Good to see you. What an amazing day so far.
Thanks so much. And I know it's just going to keep getting better over the next 20 minutes with what you've got to share, Al.
No prep there.
Well, what I'll do is, so you get all your time out, I'll jump straight out. And
bless you.
And feel free to go 1 or 2 minutes over as well. And I'll bring in your slides and over to you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Dan has very kindly done an introduction for me, and I thought I would set my slide deck really to set the tone of the next 20 minutes, which is talking about how we shift our digital strategy to leverage all the fabulous things we've been hearing about in terms of safe and responsible use of AI. It's hard to make digital strategy particularly exciting, so I've compromised and just gone for bright colours in an attempt to keep your attention. So we will dive in straight away. Not going to cover too much about me. I had a very lovely introduction there from Dan. I do find when I get to a point where I can't remember too many things, it's a good window to write stuff down as if we're having a coffee shop style. So do check out my books that are all about trying to talk through some of the tricky topics, particularly my latest book, The Awkward Questions in Education. And I suspect if you did your list of the top 10 questions, you'd find many of the ones that I featured in my book. Anyway, if we were in the room and I was talking about digital and AI, and more importantly, a digital strategy in our schools, I suspect half of you would say, "Oh, this is going to be exciting, innovative. It's going to be a chance for us to look at innovation and creativity." And the other half would say, "Oh, no, not more things. Not more things that I've got to find capacity for. It's not my area of strength, digital AI. It's both scary and an opportunity." And the truth is, that is absolutely the nuance that everybody is feeling. The last week has been a perfect example of how we start to build confidence to try and adapt and use things safely, and how we weave them into our practice. If I zoom out, the thing that I see consistently around the world right now is this shift between the arrival of AI and how it weaves into the workplace, into our education system, and how that moves onto more of a focus around skills, those soft skills that I would argue are now the power skills that we need within education. And actually within that, what we're trying to do is develop skills for our staff, for our teachers, our support staff, and how we can weave that in a simple and effective way. Now, you will be shocked to hear that I've written a chapter in Dan's Back to School Guide, and it's all about a framework of how we can take those stepping stones to introduce AI easily and safely in steps, make it purposeful, and have a process that we can rinse and repeat. So our little session today is going to take us along those steps, starting at setting the scene, which is my attempt here to really say, in every context, we really want to start with a purpose. We often talk about what we intend to do. We certainly often talk about how we intend to do something, but we often forget to mention the why. Why are we doing this? What are we trying to mitigate? And sometimes the external message has to be everything we're doing is about improving teaching and learning, when in reality, in the short term, quite a lot is about reducing staff workload, building digital skills, digital competency, so that staff can use our own professional judgment as to when tools are or aren't appropriate. And you've seen some amazing tools over the last 4 days. I have to confess, a bit of a toddler fan as well, so there's another toddler on the list. But let's go through our steps and see how many of these sound familiar to you, but more importantly, actually accessible, because sometimes this topic can sound a little bit like a techie's manual, and I want to try and make it something that's much more clear and simple for everybody. So we're going to set the scene. Start with the purpose, why AI matters and how it works. Think of all those things on our school, district risk registers in terms of the pressure we've got on staff workload, recruitment, retention, looking at ways that we can make the curriculum more accessible, speed up and close the feedback loop, lots of things that will resonate within your school. And then we'll talk about the foundations, which is actually you need to have some form of digital strategy built around a good digital infrastructure where you can start to layer change. Then, not surprisingly, we're going to talk about priorities, and priorities ultimately are simply going to be, there's lots of things we could do, but where are our focused areas of development that we want to do? Often that's where leadership weave in to a digital strategy. Talking about AI, you've had loads of great resources over the last 4 days, but focusing around both the opportunities where it can have short and medium-term positive impact, and being mindful of the risks, whether it's about bias or understanding how we explain it, or just making sure we're safe and secure in those data pools that we're creating, how we might create a simple AI policy checklist, how we test and evaluate, and let's be honest, we don't want to waste precious time if things are never going to work, how you become the human in the loop, that feedback loop, and then ultimately how we evolve that into a strategy. Now, I'm going at lickety-split pace. You'll be pleased to hear at the end of it, in the resources that Dan's sharing, you'll have a copy of this presentation so you can take it away. This is not something I'm going to read out to you. You're very welcome. I'm sure that's the last thing you want to do on a Friday. But this is talking about setting the scene. If we sit with school leadership, particularly clusters of schools in a district or perhaps international schools together, often the first conversation is, where are we at now? Are we trying to stabilise what we do, repair some areas of shortcomings we've got within our delivery, trying to focus on improvement, or just sustain really good practice? And all of those are really important questions to ask ourselves first, because it will not be a one-size-fits-all. When we look at our digital journey, particularly with the introduction of AI, we need to have that flexibility of where we're at and where we want to try and deliver improvements for each school. I'm trying to put them a little bit like a link in the chain. So those foundations are, we've got a vision, what we're trying to achieve. We've got a strategy. We're looking to develop digital. Maybe we want to focus more universal design for learning, project-based learning, whatever it might be. We want to reflect on our willingness and engagement on using technology, how easy it is for us to do it, setting a purpose, a timeline. We don't want that sort of Damocles because we want to introduce a new tool on the first day of term and expect everyone to suddenly be competent using it. Making sure we've got a really effective feedback loop so we can build our own strength and muscle memory within our organisation, and how we can also develop those relationships. So really, that for me focuses on those priorities, little Venn diagram. Who doesn't like an opportunity for a Venn diagram? Just have to be in there. But talking about how we do our co-production and our priorities in the digital journey, it is not about how much kit can we get or what's the latest kit and can we find a way to use it. It absolutely at the heart is about teachers and students and age and stage, also potentially parents, talking about where technology and tools can be a lever to help mitigate barriers, help improve teaching, learning, speed of feedback, and so on. And then around the outside, you've got all sorts of things from our senior leadership team saying, well, these are our priorities right now. Our network manager, our IT team within our schools and districts saying, well, actually, foundationally, we're not going to be able to cope with using all these new tools. Data privacy, the more we connect, the more we roll. Accessibility and send. One thing that's really, really huge is we don't want to introduce tools that add complexity and grow the digital divide within our schools for our learners. So often it's about simplicity that's more important than complexity. Safeguarding, making sure we've always got an eye to that digital safety, digital citizenship wrapped around it. Governance, keep asking those questions. Why are we doing this? How are we going to measure the output? And then finance. Well, finance doesn't dictate the decision, but it does sometimes dictate the speed of the journey, and that's really important. And then our training, and I call it continuous professional development, often just PD, our professional development that fits around the outside. How does this all weave in our priorities? Well, some of our priorities around, effective use of EdTech because it's expensive and we've all got really tight budgets this year. Then we move on to PedTech, pedagogy-led technology, making sure we're using decisions for the right purpose. That old AI, not Al, unfortunately, that AI is a hot topic, and where does that feed in, mitigating the barriers? Effective use of data and how we weave in skills. So all those things sort of sit together. And it starts there with the confidence is king, the 4 stages of teacher confidence and using the technology, making sure that we start by actually empowering teachers through professional development to build confidence in the tools that they're then going to be using in the classroom, being confident about the the functionality of AI, the risks and the opportunities that sit around it. And again, all foundations that we build into it. And then being aware of the short-term offers, so whether it's about personalized learning, assistive technologies, language learning, real-time feedback and assessment. You've heard from loads of different solutions over the last 4 days that all have, might sometimes seem quite similar, but they're all really different and nuanced in what they offer. Tools that can really help save time, not because we want to free up time to do nothing, but we want to free up time with technology to have more time for human-to-human learning. And I think that human-to-human element is what we want to free up by using technology purposefully. So that sits in our opportunities and risks. We've got an opportunity to use tools that can do some of these things that are better and more effective than us, to allow more time for the things that we're really, really strong at. And maybe that weaves through to saying, as our opportunities for risk, let's have a look and think about the evolving role of how that affects a teacher in the age of AI, about how we have more time for learning communities, preparing our learners for an AI-driven future. Certainly that's what labour market information is shouting right now. Thinking about co-design, how we deliver that, being a partner and a learner. Sometimes we talk about the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. For me, it's about actually allowing the individual professional judgment as to when the tools best fit, and also making sure we can safely create and curate AI-driven content. If I balance in my digital strategy that I'm pulling together with all those different trends, we'd also then say, don't forget the challenges. Legislation tends to lag, so we need to be leading the curve within education, mitigating the staff knowledge gap. Sometimes I'll talk about an AI tool and I'll have senior leaders whispering, saying, I was using this tool yesterday and it was excellent. And you have to kind of question, why are you whispering? Because it feels like I'm cheating. And we need to remove that fear that using a tool is somehow abdicating our responsibility. This is about empowering you to use your professional skills as an educator, to use the right tool at the right time, and then use your professional judgment as to whether it's appropriate and will have positive impact. Alongside that, we need to be mindful about where we store our data, thinking about ways that AI and other tools shift the goalpost when it comes to assessment and how we change the idea of assessment. Not a surprise, over the last 2 years, we've seen lots more conversations around project and problem-based learning and other topics, and also building that digital awareness deficit. And sometimes that's with parents as well as within the teaching cohort we have within our schools. At pace, AI policy tenants. Sometimes we say, yes, we've got a brand new AI policy in our organisation, and I see something that looks like it's 300 pages and wheeled on a trolley. There are some key tenants here, which are agreeing just a few. The core tools we're using that have AI functionality, setting a baseline policy so staff know about what tools to use, whether they have to signpost use if they're outputting curating resources, giving staff the confidence, empowering teachers to take risks, to explore, trial and discover what works well, capturing feedback, good and bad, and sharing it, getting out of our silos as part of our school district digital strategy, agreeing a policy that refines each time we evaluate tools that fit and are within our schema, and then making sure that we start thinking then about student skills competency. In other words, we build the workforce competency first and then give us confidence in the classroom to develop that on to our learners. Again, not going to read these to you because I'm doing these at pace of all the resources. These are self-reflective questions. Sometimes it's really easy to come to online events and give people a list of answers, but in truth, that would be a folly. Every school will be different, every scenario will be different, and often every educator will be different in their confidence layers. So what I try and share are just key questions to reflect on within your school, whether it's about how you're incorporating AI into your school's curriculum and your digital vision, to how you're thinking about particular platforms, are you being platform agnostic, through to just thinking about the broader picture of have you got the right infrastructure, so you're not building on sandy land, as the old phrase goes. What that does feed into is step 6 on those 8 steps through our very rapid structure. And again, don't worry, in the book, we walk it through in a much more conversational style with lots of action points for you, is we need to know how to test and evaluate that measure of impact. Up until recently, I've argued more often than not, we're pre-programmed in education. When we want to measure impact, it's always going to be about attainment and progress when it comes to student outcomes. Whereas now we're thinking, actually, some of the measures of impact are much more about accessibility, about reducing time, workload for staff, so there's more interaction, by looking at tools that allow for greater student engagement, speed up the process and feedback, We need to change our measures for evaluation. And then we go on to something which is great when we have these events, as we've had the last 4 days, looking at the evidence. Evidence-informed use of educational technology, thinking about not just the anecdotal, well, Dan told me this is a great tool, but the descriptive, well, I saw a really good case study on this school that was using this tool. I've got the correlational evidence, well, my class has tried this for her term and this other class has used it for a different period, and we've seen the differences, so we can see the value add. And then there's maybe the causal evidence when we start looking at curriculum resources, where we can look at research that backs it up. But that all comes along into what I like to always share as a little bit of a lickety-split checklist, which is when we look and we're thinking about, we've heard about some great tools, how do we try them? Let's think first of all about actually trying, first of all, about thinking about splitting it between pedagogy and technology. So rather than just one person thinking they can evaluate tools completely, let's first of all think about the tool, whether it aligns with our curriculum. Are we clear, doing a questionnaire perhaps about that digital content? And we're thinking about whether we've already got something that does it already. Certainly we often find when we do a review of our licensing that we've got more tools than we thought we had. And are we clear about its pedagogical purpose? On the flip side, from a technology perspective, will the technology we're looking at work with our current and future devices? Is it locked into iPads or Chromebooks, or is it platform agnostic? Will it work with our current infrastructure, or do we need to have a massive upgrade on our access points and Wi-Fi stream? Does it meet our school privacy policy? Where's the data being stored? Think of those typical data protection impact assessments. What data is captured? Where's the data stored? Who has access to it? And from how long? And those are the core tenets that we can sit along. And then alongside that, we can then build in that AI bit. Have we had the AI CPD, so we're confident with the tools? Have we got a list of approved applications? And have we also got that basic policy? And then we can start to develop our knowledge. And the last bit, just before we go into the full evaluation, is will it roster our existing systems? We don't want to have a new tool that requires us to set up all of our student data for a second time. So that integration and rostering is really key. If we go yes, 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 then we don't waste any time when we dive into having an evaluation and trial, where we make sure staff have discussed the product and we have a group look at it, that we've had a vendor do a presentation so we're really clear of its full capabilities and desired intent, that we've had a chance to evaluate it in our setting, not just at a trade show, and that we had a chance to pilot it for a sufficient period to make sure it's got positive impact, that we can then conclude the item as beneficial to learning and actually measure the impact, and then we can determine whether it's going to have value. And then we can take it to our senior leadership team and we can actually put a request in for that new tool built on a foundation of confidence and evidence-based, and we haven't wasted unnecessary time evaluating tools that we're never going to fit. Now, I'm conscious that we're always on a whistle stop today because there's so many great things. Let's just imagine how these things build into your pillars of a digital strategy. And don't worry, you can have different pillars and you can name them how you like. But I would argue one strand is looking at tools that will help us innovate learning and how we can build around that. The second is about tools that will allow us to focus on having a campaign to developing our student digital skills. Not the digital natives that think they come from the technology, but actually can use the technology we're using within our schools safely and appropriately, and also building their digital citizenship skills at the same time. And then one about developing teacher skills often gets forgotten or asked to do out of hours, but our focus on how our digital strategy will help upskill. Think about the early part of these steps here, building our confidence with AI tools, making sure we reflect on our technology and infrastructure, not building on sandy land, got the right equipment, making sure we also think about how these tools can help us improve communication across our teaching and staff workforce, as well as digitally supporting communication with parents and community. And last but not least, well-being. Why shouldn't it be on our digital strategy? Aren't some of these tools primary aims to reduce workload, build and create better time for human-to-human collaboration, perhaps support our more vulnerable learners by having support mechanisms and other resources? Thinking of how our digital strategy pulls together and AI sits across all those strands, because we see with the products you've heard over the last 4 days, they're woven into many of those strands, and so we don't get a choice. It's here to stay. We want to make sure we leverage the good bits and use it most effectively. The last bit, the human in the loop, never going to go away. You are the most important one. This works well. That didn't work well. This needs consideration. And where you've got a really good relationship with a vendor, it's not transactional. It's the start of a relationship. You get the feedback, the product improves, you get the output. Really, really important. A couple of takeaways that I'm not going to go through here, but they're there in the slide deck for you. One, of course, is digital strategy for safe use of AI in schools. Just things to think about when it comes to in your curriculum. And a little remember there of those. Set the scenes, answer the questions, identify school priorities, signpost opportunities, signpost tenants, create a framework, create that feedback loop, report evidence and innovate, and keep rinsing and repeating as part of your digital strategy. That's a super quick summary. If you want to get your focus into some really good reading for the remainder of the year, I check out this book here. Had a lovely review from a certain Mr. Fitzpatrick, always there supporting. So thank you very much. I have written a chapter in this lovely book here, which I am sure you will enjoy. And beyond that, do get in touch. Thank you, thank you. That was a very whistle-stop tour.
I think what you're going to want to do is come back to this video, put it down to 0.5 speed, and and then get the most out of it, because there was so much, and you can see from the comments there was so much packed in there. It was so good, and you know what? I was watching that thing, and a school could hire a consultant for a lot of money to come in and share less advice than you've just shared in that 20 minutes. It's gold for anybody who's leading AI integration into their schools. So thank you so much for sharing it with everybody. And Al does a step-by-step process and talk through everything he's just shared and more in his chapter in the Educators 2026 AI Guide. Oh, thanks so much for giving up your time today. We really appreciate that you've come and joined us and shared your wisdom.
Absolute pleasure. Great job, Dan, as well. Thank you.
We'll speak soon. Take care. Okay.